Yeah, hi, and welcome to my Zoom tutorials. This is a new venture in my life caused by the coronavirus. I never thought I would be sitting here doing things to be seen in America and other places in this way. So it's it's going to be quite an experience for me, and I hope it'll be quite an experience for you. Well, yeah, the whole thing is that I'm going to show you how to paint some pictures um, in watercolor, and I'm going to be using this Zoom system. You see, I've got this thing on my head. That's because if I don't have that on, the sound gets pretty bad. So I've got to have that on to improve the sound. Another funny thing is that I've got three cameras. I've got this one here. And I've got the one over here looking at my paints, where I'm going to be mixing my paints. And if I can remember how to get to the third one, then I'll do it over here, and that's where I'll be painting my picture over here. And the fact is, the picture we'll be painting in the first session is a pretty quick wet into wet snow scene. I shall explain it. I shall explain a little bit more about this in a minute, but if I can find myself here somewhere, so we'll so I will show you how to do this. But the picture we're going to be painting, it will be, wait a minute, I'll get it in a minute. I'll get it right in a minute. The picture we'll be doing will be this one here. And yeah, as you can see, it's a colorful evening sky with some trees here, and we have some snow here. The white is the snow, and the gray stripes are shadows in the snow. If you didn't have these shadows here, the whole bottom area would be white, and you wouldn't be able to see whether it was snow or white paper or what. But as soon as these stripes come on here, then you start thinking that perhaps it's some contours in the snow, and you can see it's a hill. I mean, it's not flatland. It's going down in this direction here, the direction of these gray stripes. So it tells you it's going downhill. Now, before I start painting the picture, there's some things which I want to explain to you. I'll just put it onto this view here so you can see what I'm doing. See, I've got two things with water here, and my paints are over here. Now, when you paint wet into wet, wet into wet actually means painting something wet into something else which is wet. Usually it's wet paint onto wet paper. That's the most common way of painting wet into wet. Other ways of painting wet into wet, I'll just sit down and do something so you can see me here. Other way of painting wet into wet is to paint onto dry paper, and then you take water and you spread the paint over the dry paper with your wet brush. That is also wet into wet. And there are some other ways as well, but the most common one, that's where you paint a color onto wet paper. And this is what the sky that I'll be showing here is. That's how this sky is painted. And just to show you very quickly, I wet the paper here, see? And then I take, here you can see there are at least 2 or 3 colors. There are actually 3 colors. There is a the cadmium yellow, which I, for example, paint on first. I don't paint it over the whole area. I just paint some stripes. Then I take the next color, which is alizarin crimson. That's the cold red color. And this color I also paint sort of around so that I can still see the yellow and I can still see the red. And actually what I also put on here was a blue, a Prussian blue. Watch out with the Prussian blue. It can darken the other colors, so be careful. Now, when you do that, when you put these three colors onto wet paper, nothing much happens. I mean, they spread around a bit, but not very much, not the way I want them to spread. So I clean my brush in water, take some water off with this tissue paper here, and then I go into the color and I sort of spread it around, trying to find out how I want these colors to run into each other. And when I'm satisfied with that, then I take a Payne's Gray, or mix it with a cadmium yellow, so I get a very dark green. And as soon as I've got that, I make a very broad stripe across the bottom of this area here. And what I'm expecting here to happen is that the color which has just landed onto the wet sky area, it says to itself, it's wet. So I'm going to run up, and it's beginning to, small trees are beginning to grow in the color. Yeah. There isn't very much happening at the moment. That's a bit of a shame, but sometimes, I mean, with water, wet into wet, you cannot control things 100%. You can control things about 60%. You can decide which colors you're going to have. You can decide for the first how wet the paper is going to be. You can decide how wet the colors are going to be. You can decide where you're going to put the colors, but you cannot decide very much how the colors run into each other. And sometimes they run quite well, like, for example, here, they gave a nice edge. And here, I've got something completely different. So well, there you are. You see, you can't really control that 100%. I'm quite satisfied with the sky here. Actually, I quite like that sky. The trees, okay. Are they trees? Well, perhaps they're trees. And then I take the same color again. Now I go and paint on dry paper. This here is dry paper. So I take a little bit of this color that I've used for the trees. But now let's get a little bit away from, let's take this a little bit further out. Okay, but now I put my brush almost flat onto the surface of the paper here, and then I drag it across the surface of the paper. Now the paper is, it's uneven. That's what I'm trying to say. The paper is uneven. So when I drag my brush across this uneven surface of the paper, you can see what's happening. I keep on getting sort of white holes in the paint, and that is exactly what I want. So so that is fine. Now this can dry, and after it's dried, then I take this little brush here. This little brush, if you've seen any of my films, you've seen this little brush before. It's called a rigger or a liner. It's got very long, where are we? It's got very long hairs, not very many hairs, but they are stiff. They are made of nylon. You can buy these liner brushes with sable hair. Sable is much too soft and you can't get anything out of it. So it's got to be a stiff brush, a stiff haired brush like this. You wet it. Okay, I can take the same color again as I used for the trees. Then I can sort of put a few posts and perhaps a quick line across the top as if there was some wire or something in these things. And that is my picture. This was supposed to be an explanation of the techniques, but you can see it was so easy, went so quickly that I have now painted the whole picture.
Hi, if you like the way that I teach and believe that you can get benefit from my lessons, then I suggest that you have a look at my ebook. The book is called Watercolor, a Book of Watercolor Techniques, and is available on my website. The ebook contains 23 chapters and is written with people starting in watercolor in mind. There are sections on painting theory, tips and tricks, and step-by-step painting instructions. The book is now improved with extra illustrations and video clips. The ebook costs $15 and one pays by PayPal. I send you the book by email after I have confirmation of the payment. So go to my ebook webpage and see the contents of the chapters. And if you decide to buy it, then you can see how to order it on the same page.
But I could, I suppose, paint it again just so you can see how it's done. And if I don't explain it this time, because I've just explained it, you can just see how easy this picture is. Okay, it's easy because I know what I'm doing. It's easy because I've done this picture 50 times, 100 times. It's easy because I know the techniques. It's easy because I know how to use the brushes. It's easy because I know what's happening between the paper and the water. And that is the problem with people that have not painted very much. They don't know any of those things. I won't say they think it's a miracle or some trick or something like that, but if you know the physics of how paint lands on paper and moves on paper, on dry paper and on wet paper and things like that, then you can control things very much quicker than if you don't know anything. If you just think it's pot luck, then yeah, in the end, you almost probably learn to paint, but it'll take you a long time. But if you know it's how to control the things, then it goes much quicker. I'll just do it once more, but this time I won't explain it quite so much. I will talk through this picture so you can just see how this thing goes here. I've got another piece of paper here. I can do it on that. Actually, what I didn't do before, which I probably should have done, is to have some sort of line which tells me where the sky stops and where the snow is. So I know I'm going to have my sky up in this area, my trees here, and my snow down here. Okay. Another very, very important thing, which I actually didn't mention when I did the first thing here, is that when you're going to be painting wet into wet, it is almost vital. It's almost, it is very important that you have your paints dissolved before you wet the paper. Very often, wet into wet is a quick process. It's so quick that you don't usually have time to sit there and think. So when you've wetted the paper, you've got to put the colors on straight away. If you wait some time, then the paper starts to dry and the paints don't move the way you want them to move and things like that, and everything gets spoiled. So the first thing you have to always do if you're going to be painting wet into wet is to, which one do I want now? Yeah, that one there. So the first thing you've got to do is to dissolve your colors. I'm going to be using a cadmium yellow. Okay, that'll be that one. I'll be using an alizarin crimson color, and I'll be using a Prussian blue. These are the three colors I'll be using in the sky. The fourth color, or the mixture for my trees that will come here, that's a Payne's gray color mixed with a cadmium yellow, and I'm going to have it quite dark because these trees are fir trees or something like that, and they're going to be quite dark. So now I wash my brush out here, but I go over to here where I've got some clean water, and with this clean water I wet my paper. Just a few wet stripes. So I start with the yellow color, something like that. The next one will be the red. See, when I put these two colors on, I've got to make sure that I can see them both when I've finished. I can still see the yellow here, I can see the red here, I can see the mixture of the two around here. Now I take the blue. I start up in the top somewhere and make a few blue stripes across it. I'm going to have some trees at the bottom here, so I must make sure that is wet here at the bottom. Now I've gone into the water, wetted my brush, take this here green color, just increase the color a little bit and paint this very broad line across the bottom. Now you can see, because I've wetted the bottom of the paper extra here, then perhaps I shall get some better trees. So let's see how that's getting on. Yeah, well, I don't know if it's any better than it was before, but some motion, something is moving around in the trees over here. So I go back to my green color. I just take a little bit on my brush and I make, there's a little bit more water. This paper is dry now. I'm just making some, showing where the valleys in the snow are. Okay, I go back and forth with my brush. It seems that when I go backwards here, I get more of those small light areas in the. Now you can fully ask, why are the shadows on the snow green? Well, that's because I've decided they're green. If you start getting too many colors in your picture, it becomes really much too chocolate box. I mean, I'm not trying to get reality here. I'm just trying to get something which appeals to me. Now I go back to my little brush here, just wetted it. Take some of this dark green color, make some of these posts in the snow. I could also show some shadows. This is just making some very small, with the same color again, but they're now going at right angles to the posts. Now, why are there only posts here? Why aren't there any posts here? Well, it's because it's very old fence. And And there you can see this new picture now looks like this. Let's see how it looks when you get rid of the sides and we just keep the. That's just the. And there you are. This is the first exercise that I'm going to ask you to do. The whole idea with this is that we're going to have perhaps one session every week. You'll get sent before the session a picture that you can study, and then during the session I will show you how I will paint it, and then you will paint it, and you will send me a photograph. So then you can photograph it with your telephone, with your camera in your telephone, and you can email it to me, and then we'll meet up a week later, and we can go through. I can make comments to all your pictures, just so you can get something out of this. So that is the idea. I hope it works. I hope we can. Wait a minute, I'm just trying to find myself here. Now I found myself again. So that's the whole idea with this, is to get you to paint a picture, and then I shall make some comments online on Zoom while you're all sitting there in America and I'm sitting here in Denmark. Okay, shall we? So I'll stop this now. I'm going to put this onto a channel on YouTube, and I'll send you a code, so you can always go in and download it or stream it or whatever one does. And if you, for example, miss one of my sessions, I shall record all the sessions, and I'll put those little films up on YouTube. And if you miss one of my sessions, then you can always go in, and you must probably have to ask me for the code, because the codes will be different for each film. But then we'll be able to find out how you can see what we did, even if you were not present at the time. Okay, right. Keep safe. You have been watching the first of my 6 Zoom tutorials in watercolor. This tutorial has been free of charge. To see the next 5 tutorials, you can join my Zoom courses, or you can pay for the link to each of the next 5 tutorials. If you are interested, then you can contact me by mail at the following address.